I'm going to start my talk from the first slide, actually. I'm going to talk about how we have had a recent project where we've built out to several London data centres. Actually, it's a project we've not yet finished. And I'm going to rush through this because there's quite a lot I want to talk about. We're a small company, Faelix. We're myself, Lou, Laura, Kennedy, and a few others, and some helpers along the way. This time last year, or just over a year ago, I spoke at UKNOF about a MikroTik routing vulnerability. And towards the end of that talk, I hinted about our future plans. And if we'd actually done UKNOF last month, I would have been following up from that talk and telling you what actually happened next. And that would have been a sort of follow-on talk and some operational experience from what we discussed at Net Manchester. And the talk would have been this. It would have been Salt and Netbox and Vios, and it would have told you the journey of our road to getting decent routing security at our BGP peering and transit edge. Instead, things have changed, and I'm going to actually talk about what happened after that. And what happened after that, after we'd got our routing, RPKI, and all of that sorted, is we were approached by a consultant working with a wireless internet provider. And their name, the customer's name, was Pinnacom, and they do temporary connectivity for broadcast and events. And they wanted to do a large core upgrade to their network and bring more of their network to be run and managed in-house. So back in November, we started on that project, and round about February, it looked as though this project was going to go ahead. And there was some really good stuff in it because for us, and for them, we both needed to be in the same places in London, in particular, Telehouse West, a bit of North and a bit of interaction. So it was a really good fit for both them and us. February was also quite busy because Equinix advised things were going to start changing in the data center space with potential lockdowns. We ordered a rack in West. We stuck some kit in there. We actually drove down from Manchester down to London, installed some stuff there, and actually didn't have power at that stage. It was just literally dump the stuff there. We're in a rush because we also had to get to Geneva to install some equipment there, which is this server for another customer. Now, a couple of weeks later, contracts were agreed, and pretty much immediately Europe went into lockdown. And I'm actually still in mainland Europe in lockdown. So that immediately made some challenges for our project. SSE turned a blinder and delivered an NNI, and then Equinix up in Manchester went into basic lockdown as well. A few days later, we got power, and we could actually establish the link between our main network, which is in Manchester, and down to London. We had to use remote hands for this, and actually very grateful to the colleagues that helped with this. They were very smart and went with PPE, and even brought a mascot with PPE to do the cabling on that first day. The gear was all connected and racked up on the 31st of March. We got our orders in for connections, and pretty much a day later, the very swift provisioning team at Links had us up and peering. And that was time to then start sending out peering requests. And the talk I would have given would have been how we've automated that. And so it literally was a case of a tiny bit of YAML and a tweet to say, thank you, in this case, Andrews and Arnold, we're peering now. Timescales for this whole project were quite exciting because we found out Telehouse North wasn't going to be delivered until literally a couple of days ago now. And interaction isn't going to be ready for us till June, which is quite a long order time from placing orders back in February. But thankfully, we could get Pinnacom into Telehouse West. And there they are. Our intrepid remote hands mascot has done the work racking them up. But literally the following day, they announced there was a bit of a heightened level of urgency to this whole project due to a change at their existing managed service provider. And that meant they wanted to be live as soon as possible, ideally by the 30th of April, and somehow move 5 existing providers' connectivity at the same time. That same day, Flex Optics basically announced they're having supply chain problems. And we saw that across Flex Optics, Fiberstore, and numerous other providers where getting DACs, getting patch cables of the right lengths would take either longer than expected or potentially would be coming all the way from China and take weeks. In the meantime, we had to plan this migration, and we had to work out how we were going to get all of the various bits and pieces connected from their existing suppliers. So we did some direct where we could get it in time, but we knew that where it was going to go to north, we weren't going to be ready in time. So we had to work with those other providers to do some clever tunnels or similar temporary bodges to get things working. And then another problem we encountered was the SD-WAN provider that Pinnacom use couldn't interconnect to the cloud service that they used for that in a reasonable amount of time. And getting licenses for the boxes themselves has proved a nightmare. Vendors don't sell direct, and distributors literally just aren't answering the phone. We fixed that with a virtual appliance on a trial license, and that might have been resolved by now, but we'll see. In the meantime, we did all of the good stuff that you do as an LIR, get all of the configs in, get all of the testing done, and a lot of collaborative chat between ourselves and the customer on a self-hosted Mattermost. We got IPv6 working for them straight away because they hadn't yet been announcing any v6. And that meant we could actually start them peering, which they did a couple of days after we did. We had a long first migration night. Lots and lots of pre-planning had gone into this. We found during the initial layer 2 establishment between old and new networks that some of our assumptions might be wrong. But by 11 o'clock that night, things looked pretty good. We'd conclude the maintenance window and went to bed. So following morning, 8 o'clock, Alex chats at me. Alex at Pinnacom says he's had a call from a few people. And I was worried at this point. I hadn't had my first cup of coffee of the day. But the actual result was speeds had doubled after the migration. I've got a very brief interlude because at this point in the sort of timeline of everything, Cloudflare announced his BGP Safe yet. And we thought, yeah, this is great because we've already done this. Unfortunately, we actually had a seg fault that morning in BGPD, which crashed BGPD, and it was related to RPKI. It is actually fixed in a more recent version of FRR. And I'm very grateful to a guy called Wolf480PL who helped me debug some of the stuff to see that FRR 71 had fixed it. Getting connected between Telehouse and Interaction was a challenge as well, because we wanted to make sure that the providers we had up in the north and the providers that we were going to be using to connect between the north and the south and the providers in the south, we had some diversity. It also came down to timescales, and EU networks actually came in best in terms of price and product. But yeah, we're going to end up having to light dark fiber to get that working. It's good, but it's, you know, the challenges of lighting dark fiber. We'll see where that goes. We'll know on June the 1st. Co-location in North, we were going to do via Voxility because we want to use their DDoS mitigation. And it was good because they have a UK bank account. Paying invoices is dead easy. But as we got to the handover date, we found PDUs weren't ready, just as we had problems in West. Thankfully, they managed to order some from a UK-based supplier. The ILK got delivered. And on the 7th, we started racking up. And some of the pictures from our team doing that rack up include what Telehouse are doing for social distancing. Only one person's allowed to use the lift at a time. So I got the message saying I'm not allowed in the lift at the same time as the mousse. But by the end of that evening of the 7th, we had stuff racked up. We arrived and 2 down, 1 to go. We've still got interaction to do. We're operating on a reduced staff because since the UK went into lockdown, our senior engineer, Lou, she's having to look after her child, her 2-year-old. It's a real challenge for anybody who's got kids. And I'm very, very grateful to, it's a huge team that have been involved in this. It's not just been ourselves. There's been everyone from the customer side to numerous providers. We have been very, very busy, and we look forward to finally turning up interaction in a few weeks' time. that's me done, my 10 minutes. I'll hand back for questions.
Thank you, Marek. Okay, we're open for some questions. I see one already.
So we have a question from Anruk Bhatia. He asks, can you share more about FRR issue with RBKI?
I certainly can. If you actually go to our website, faelix.net, and click on news, you'll find there is actually a reasonably detailed discussion in one of our very recent news bits about that. But basically, 7.2 and earlier have some sort of a race condition where RPKI and BGP might segfault, but 71 and onwards, it's fixed.
We have another question from Jonathan Matthews, who's asked, how much more restrictive a lockdown do you feel you could have coped with? How close to the edge of can't be done do you feel you were?
Well, being locked down in France, here where I am at the moment, the lockdown is really restrictive. In terms of actually the staffing in the UK, though, I think the biggest challenge we've faced has actually been about availability of stuff rather than remote hands and the like. I'm reasonably confident we could have had stuff shipped to the telehouses and paid remote hands to do this rather than having our own team that were based locally and actually did work for several ISPs all at the same time. There's quite a lot of coordination between numerous bits of maintenance done by the same few people. So I think we'd have probably been okay, but we'd have just seen lots more remote hands via the telehouse and interaction teams.
Okay, do we have any more questions?
No, I think that's it.
Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Thank you, Marek.